I'm Teresa Rhodes, Development and Communications at the IU Center for Global Health Equity. And it's my pleasure to introduce Tim Ueber and Bill Tierney. Tim has worked at the IU School of Medicine for 13 years as Director of Plan Giving. Prior to that, he worked several years as a wealth strategist for a large bank, and he also worked in private practice as an estate planning attorney. Throughout his career, he has built expertise working with individuals and families in the areas of tax planning, retirement planning, estate, and charitable planning. Dr. Bill Tierney is an internationally recognized physician and researcher in biomedical informatics, health services, and clinical database epidemiology. He's practiced for more than 35 years as a primary care physician, emergency physician, and hospitalist. Bill is an IU School of Medicine alum and longtime faculty member, former chief of medicine of Wishart, the predecessor for Eskenazi Health. His current roles at IU in the Fairbanks School of Public Health and its Department of Global Health, and University of Texas at Austin in the Dell Medical School's Department of Population Health, where he co-founded Ampath Mexico. His founding director of informatics and research for Ampath Kenya, and led the team that developed Sub-Saharan Africa's first ambulatory electronic health records system, which grew into OpenMRS, that has now been implemented in more than 50 countries. So with that, I'd like to start with you, Bill, and ask you if you would tell us a little bit about how you first became involved with Ampath and how your work with Ampath has grown over the years.
Thanks, Terry. I guess I'm going to start with what I tell a lot of junior faculty is that no matter where you think your career is going to go, it's going to go somewhere else. You know, things are going to come along that are going to divert you from where you thought you were going, and oftentimes they're very good things. And I had specifically said I'd never had any intention to get involved in global health. What IU was doing, and that was great, but that wasn't me. And then in 1997, Bob Eintert showed up at my office with a funding opportunity from the Forty International Center at NIH for international training in medical informatics, and wanted to know if I would apply for the funds so we could help build up the library system at Moore University and Moore Teaching Referral Hospital. And I said, okay. And so you applied for it. We were one of 4 who were funded. And I ended up going in 1998, going to Kenya for the first time. And I met the 4 people who were going to be the fellows that were selected by Moore University. And they said, that library stuff is pretty good, but we'd actually rather establish electronic medical records. We want to be able to do research in our clinics, and we don't have any data to do that. And I said, I actually don't know much about libraries, but I know a little bit about electronic medical records, having worked with Clon McDonald and Regan Streif and creating the medical record system that was in Wishart Hospital for 40 years. And so we went ahead and did that and created a primary care system for Masorat, which is a clinic about 20 kilometers from Eldoret, Kenya. And it actually worked. And a couple of years later, Joe Mamlin retired, went to Kenya, thought he was going to be our team leader for a couple of years, ran headlong into the AIDS pandemic and decided that we were going to do something about it. And I remember the day I was sitting in his house in Kenya, in Eldoret, and he came down one morning. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was down there working, and he came down because that's when he starts working. And he said, that cute little primary care system we have at Masorat? He said, well, we're going to establish an AIDS program, and there may be 1 million people with HIV, or at least hundreds of thousands in our catchment area. And we're going to take responsibility for all of them. We're going to need an electronic medical record system. So sit down, we're going to design one today. And we took our old system and redesigned it to support the HIV/AIDS program. And it worked until it didn't. But we showed, because it's in a platform that wasn't sustainable and it wasn't expandable. But then we brought people in from Regan Streif and created this other thing. But it got me involved in Kenya in ways that I never thought I'd get involved. And then as we started caring for patients with HIV, we realized we didn't know how to do it. I mean, all of the guidelines, all of the medications, all of the tests were all developed for the United States and Western Europe. And, the virus is different in Africa. The patients are different. The comorbid diseases are different. The health system is different. The available tests and treatments are all different. And so we had no idea how to do it. So we established a research program so we could actually rigorously study what we were doing. And it started small. I think I started in 2002. It was 2005 before we got our first major grant. By 2010, we'd gotten $65 million of extramural funding, most of it from NIH. And to date, they've gotten more than $240 million of extramural funding. About 2/3 of it for HIV/AIDS, about 2/3 of it with principal investigators from IU, and 80% from NIH. So they've done okay, but it was all done by necessity. It wasn't done by, we're going to plan this big research program. No, we developed it because we had to figure out what we were doing. And it got huge. We had investigators from 20 different North American universities. Were involved in 3 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, Tanzania, Uganda, besides Kenya. It grew into this big, the size it had to attack the problem that we were attacking. So we kind of got sucked in. I spent 11 years of my life doing that, and it was life-changing for me. You're muted.
Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing now with Ampath?
Well, I took a 5-year sabbatical to help start a medical school in Texas at the University of Texas at Austin, and I was asked to come down to be the founding chair of the Department of Population Health, and the dean wanted us to have a global health program. He knew that if you wanted to be a major medical school and attract good students, you had to be involved in global health. And I said, fine, we're going to join Ampath Kenya. I said, it's already established. It's safe. It's effective, and the infrastructure's there. And he said, Austin's a Latino city. We ought to be doing something in Latin America. And I said, I agree, but if you want us to wait until that's ready, it's going to be 5 years before we have any students that we have an environment where you can take a significant number of students and residents to. So that let's join Ampath, and then we'll find a place to do this, to replicate it in Mexico. And that's what we did. We ended up doing a tour of medical schools in Mexico, and we had several that wanted to do it. We chose one in Puebla. And now beginning our 4th year of a collaboration with them, initially funded by a $2.5 million grant from Lilly, and we just got another $3 million grant to begin launching. The first one was to launch the program. This is now to launch diabetes and primary care treatment for diabetes and its associated chronic diseases in rural communities surrounding Puebla. Puebla is actually a very wealthy city. There's 5 universities in it, and it's a lot of money there. And you go 30 minutes outside of there, and you're in rural Kenya. It looks and it feels just like rural Kenya, and the healthcare is primordial at best. There's no primary care, just kind of urgent visit care delivered by 6-year medical students. So we have an opportunity to improve that, and diabetes is a terrible problem in Mexico. More people in Mexico die of diabetic renal disease, one complication of diabetes, than all cancers put together. So that we have an opportunity to make that better, because it's easily treatable with the right medications and the right guidelines for care. So we got involved in now Ampath Mexico, and it's beginning to grow. We've got developing people on the ground, but it's still small and on the upswing compared to the well-established program in Kenya.
Mm-hmm. And you're based in Indy. You were in Texas, but
it took
now
me
you're
even
back.
5 years to start their department, and then I was actually commuting from my home in Indiana. So then I moved back here and was offered a position to be the associate dean for population health for the Fairbanks School of Public Health.
Terrific. Well, clearly you've given tremendously to Ampath through a multitude of years you've devoted through your talent, curiosity, problem solving, jump right in type of spirit and expertise, as well as your treasure. So thank you for being an Ampath donor. Can you tell us about a little bit about how you support Ampath? for your current giving and tax smart way that you're giving?
Well, for years I've been giving this, some money every year to AMP. There are 3 or 4 different organizations that I give money to every year, uh, and Ampath is one of actually it's the one I give the most to, but it's the one I've given most to over the years. Other than the individual kind of annual donations of a few $1,000s. I also, when my father died, I got some money from his estate that I really didn't need, so I gave half of it to Ampath to help help fund the building of it's the Ampath centers that it was building, the building of the different Ministry of Health clinics that we were spreading our treatment program to. But more recently, as I've gotten older, uh, a couple of things. One is that I've put money for years into an IRA and maximized the pre-tax donations. You can, your payroll deduction stuff you can do in your 403B or 457B, so I've done that, and now that I'm over the age of 72 and a half, I have to start taking what's called a required minimum distribution, or RMD, which is 120 for the first year. It's 1/26th of everything that you've got in your IRA, and that ends up being a substantial amount of money, and it's taxed when you take it out. But it turns out there's this thing called the QCD, the Qualified Charitable Distribution, or I call OCD, which is you can take up to $100,000 of your RMD and put it into this charitable fund, and it is not taxed, but it has to be spent within the year that it's put there. So I just summed up all the money that I was giving to the just actually 4 organizations I was giving most money to, and I just took it out as a lump sum from RMD and put it in this QCD, and I write checks from that to pay these things. And it ends up it cost me 30% less to be able to give that money away by doing it that way. Otherwise, I'd be paying taxes on that money. So that's the first thing I did. The second thing I did is that, in our will, I there's probably going to be money left over when my wife and I pass. And so what's going to happen with that? So we've decided that a certain amount was going to go to our 2 sons and their families, but then the rest we want to do something with. And so we've each decided we get half, and we decide who we want to target that to. And I've put a certain percentage of what's left that's going to go to Ampath. So I can't say exactly how much it's going to be, because I'm hoping that I live long enough that I spend some of that stuff. But given our current amount of money we've got saved, and I'm still working, that I anticipate there's going to be a substantial money left that I want to be able to do something good with, and Ampath is one of the organizations that I'm targeting the most with the funds.
We are incredibly grateful and thrilled with your choice of Ampath. Have you documented that gift, or you're in the process of documenting that?
Yeah, we've got it. Yeah, we've got a will. And we've got a letter that's attached to it that we sent to our lawyer, saying this is how we want to have the money spent.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'm going to shift a little.
By the way, our lawyer happens to be Bob Holden's daughter, and Bob Holden's been a former dean who he was the dean at the time that we launched Ampath, so in Kenya. So and he's been closely tied to the program all the time. So it's kind of neat that she's helping us do this.
Yeah, sure has. I love hearing the Ampath network and how so many people share a passion for the work. I'm going to shift to you, Tim. In light of what Bill has shared with us, do you have any additional thoughts or information you'd like to share that might be helpful for folks?
Well, I do. I mean, you want me to launch into my little segment here for the remaining portion?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, welcome everybody. Appreciate everybody joining. And Bill, thank you for sharing your background and your commitment to Ampath. That's wonderful. Hold on here. I got this time of year is a little allergy driven for me. So I've got a cough drop and I'm drinking a little water. Hold on.
I think many of us probably share that.
This week's been a little unbelievable. Anyway, we have a slide up we can pull up here. Okay, great. So those are 3 tax smart strategies that that I want to go through. We'll go through one at a time. The first 2 are outright gifting opportunities, tax smart strategies you can make during your lifetime. The last one is more of an estate or deferred gift. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. And Bill mentioned that he had made this type of gift. Okay, where he made a gift from his IRA, which is called a QCD gift. And when he made the IRA gift, he did it from his IRA, which is an individual retirement plan. And to be eligible to make a QCD gift, the key is it has to be from an IRA. It cannot be from a 401k or a 403b. It must come from an IRA. The other thing Bill mentioned was an RMD. So when we put money into an IRA, we're investing it and it's growing tax-free, which is wonderful. But eventually the IRS is going to tap you on the shoulder and say you need to start taking out a minimum amount. They give you a formula and you need to start taking this minimum amount out, which kind of creates a little bit of a tax problem, because every time you take an RMD out, it is taxable to you. It's includable in your taxable income. But there is a charitable solution for you to consider, which is the QCD gift. The QCD stands for, and we've got these definitions on the screen. If you want these slides afterwards, let us know. We can send them to you, or just take a screenshot with your camera if you see something you like. But a QCD, as I said, is a charitable, qualified charitable distribution. And it's a fancy way of saying it's a gift direct from your IRA to a public charity. It has to be a public charity like Ampath. And when you make that distribution, QCD gift, it is tax-free. It's not includable, as I had said. That is the key benefit. Now, let's look at some requirements in order to make this type of a gift. One is an age requirement. You have to be, and I know some folks on this call, it doesn't look like, are 70 and a half years old, and that's a wonderful place to be. But no, eventually, if you are 70 and a half year old, then that is when you are eligible to make a tax-free gift to a public charity like Ampath. Now, it isn't the year in which you take, when you make the QCD gift, you have to wait until your 70 and a half birthday. You can't take it prior. Some folks get confused and take it the year in which they turn 70 and a half, and that is not when you can take it. You have to wait until you're 70 and a half years old. And of course, some folks get very generous and say, gosh, this is wonderful. I can make a tax-free gift to charity. I'm going to give my entire $300,000 IRA to Ampath. Can I do that tax-free? And the answer is, no, you cannot. There are some limits there, and they're listed on this slide at the bottom. In 2024, the maximum allowed that you can make a QCD gift from your IRA is $105,000. That's indexed for inflation. Next year, you can give $108,000 tax-free from your IRA to a public charity like Ampath. Also, some folks will want to ask, and they usually do when they consider a QCD gift, hey, I'm used to making a gift to charity. Can I also get a tax deduction when I do a QCD? And the answer is no, you cannot. The IRS is a little bit generous by giving you a tax-free distribution, but they're not also allowing a tax deduction. And as Bill mentioned, he mentioned RMDs. He mentioned required minimum distribution. When does that begin? That begins at age 73. Okay, currently. Bill's age might have been a little different. It's all about based on your year of birth, but currently age 73 and older, you have to take an RMD, minimum amount, that's includable in your taxable income. And if you don't take that, then it's you're subject to a penalty and some interest, and we don't want folks to do that. But as Bill said eloquently, if you make a QCD gift, you also get to count that towards satisfying all or a portion of your RMD for that particular year. So that's 2 benefits. If you're 73 and older, you can have a tax-free distribution and meet all or a portion of your RMD for that year. But if you're 70 and a half, but not quite 73, you can still make the tax-free QCD gift direct from your IRA to a public charity like IU Ampath, and that is why it is a tax-smart strategy. Okay, so let's go on to the next topic that I want to cover. The second way to make a legacy gift to support Ampath, you might consider now or in the future, is an outright gift into a CGA. CGA, I'll talk about what that is here in a minute. But the big picture is, as we all know, since the pandemic has started, and it's over now, I know. I'm just saying that when it started, the interest rates went up, inflation went up. But the good thing is it drove up the payout rates from a CGA. And if you're interested in locking in those elevated payout rates, you can make a gift into a CGA this year or next year. Well, let's start with what is a CGA? A CGA is basically a contract. It's a contract where a public charity like IU Ampath agrees to pay you a fixed stream of income for life after you make an irrevocable gift of cash or stock to that public charity. Now, I like to think of, and I do not just think about it, but I talk to donors about it, as a boomerang gift. If you think about a boomerang, some people may not know what one is, but I sure heck know what a boomerang is. You throw it, and if it comes back, you catch it, and you're not left empty-handed. And so it is with a CGA gift. A CGA is pretty unique. You throw a gift of cash or stock to a public charity like Ampath. Ampath throws back to you a fixed stream of income. Fixed meaning it does not go up or down, stays the same throughout your lifetime. But you know what? The IRS gets in on the action too, and they actually throw you a tax deduction, a pretty meaningful tax deduction. So that is what a CGA is. But I also think if we walk through, next slide, please, a hypothetical example that'll help kind of cement the concept of what a CGA is. And all these numbers I'm going to mention are on the slide, so you don't have to write them down. You can just look at them, screenshot them, whatever. As I said, if you want the slide later, let us know. We'd be glad to send it to you. So if someone were to come to us today, and let's say it's a single person, a widow, widower, divorced, whatever the case may be, individual, age 74, and they come to us and say, hey, I want to make a $100,000 cash gift into a CGA. The first thing we want to do is determine what is that payout rate going to be from the CGA. And age drives the payout rate. It's a one-time snapshot that we take at the time you fund the gift. We don't look over time in the years ahead. We look one time. How old are you now at the time of the gift? The older you are at the time of your gift, the higher the payout rate. So if we had a 74-year-old come to us today, the payout rate is 6.8%. Multiply 6.8% against your $100,000 gift. Ampath would pay this donor for his or her life $6,800 fixed, does not go up or down. At the time of this gift, this donor would generate a tax deduction. The exact dollar amount is on your screen, but the tax deduction amount is almost $38,000, which you can use the year you make the gift, or any unused portion you can carry forward for the next 5 years on your tax returns. When that CGA ultimately terminates, that is when Ampath then can use the CGA's remaining assets. When does the CGA terminate? Terminates at the end of the life of this donor. Then IU Ampath can use the remaining funds as directed in writing by the donor to support Ampath's important mission. Now, there are a couple questions, common questions that we get. Then I'll mention those two briefly, and I know we're running out of time. I've got a watch here in front of me. One of the questions is, great, if I'm 74 years old, and you don't have to be 74, you can be younger. I just chose this age for illustration purposes. Great, I'm getting $6,800 a year. How is that taxed to me? And the answer is a portion, smaller portion of it is taxed to you as ordinary income tax. You include it as your ordinary income tax. But the larger portion of that $6,800 is received tax-free. We like tax-free. We talked about that with the QCD. In this context with the CGA, the larger half, if you will, of your $6,800 comes to you tax-free, which leads to the next question. Why would it be tax-free? It is tax-free because the IRS recognizes when you make a gift of cash or stock into a CGA, in essence, you're getting back your original gift money, and they're not going to really tax you on that. Okay, so know that with a CGA, the income stream paid to you, portion of it's tax-free, portion of it is tax at ordinary income. Now, if you're interested in possibly a CGA, how it might work in your personal situation, reach out to us. We'll be glad to prepare a tax-free or a charitable tax illustration of a CGA to show you how it might work. No obligation to ultimately make a gift. We'll be glad to prepare it, show you how a CGA might work. One other thing to note for anybody who's listening who's 70 and a half or older, there's a new law that took effect in 2023 where you can actually make a tax-free distribution from your IRA to fund a CGA. And yes, we do have donors that are taking advantage of that. But because it's a new law, we can have an uphill battle of trying to inform our alums and supporters and donor base of this new tax law. So clearly a CGA is a win-win. You get a fixed stream of income. Ampath receives the remaining CGA assets to support their mission. So that is a tax smart strategy you can make during your lifetime. Let's move to the next slide, please. The last and final. And that is, and Bill kind of alluded to this, that him and his wife had done this recently. This time of year, we find, this is end of the calendar year, estate planning attorneys actually get very busy. Many folks like to go and update or create their estate plan. And part of that conversation involves a possible gift to the favorite charities, perhaps like Ampath. And when they're meeting with their estate planning attorney, they might hear about a tax smart strategy of making a gift by naming Ampath as a beneficiary of their IRA. You might ask, why is that tax smart? Well, it's tax smart because when your heirs, your loved ones, receive their IRA money, again, talking of death here, inheritance here, the distribution of that IRA money is entirely taxable to the heirs who receive it, heirs except for spouses. Spouses have different rules, but if you pass an IRA to a loved one who's not a spouse, they must take out all of that IRA money within 10 years. And every penny of that is included in their taxable income, which reduces their overall inheritance, if you will. However, if you name a public charity like Ampath as a partial beneficiary, then they avoid having to pay any of those income taxes. Now, I don't have time today to show and walk through a hypothetical example to show you the tax impact of naming a public charity as a beneficiary of an IRA, but I did write an article earlier this year that does have a great example. If you want that, let us know. I'll be glad to send it to you, where we can show you the tax benefit of leaving appreciated non-IRA assets to heirs, and then maybe an IRA to a public charity like Ampath. One last note, whether you do an IRA beneficiary designation or whether you put a gift provision in your will or trust, you want to make sure you write that gift provision correctly. And there are three, and the reason is we want to make sure your gift goes to the area within Ampath that you want it to support. And writing that provision is important. And it has to have three key ingredients. You see those listed right there. The third key ingredient is probably the most important to some extent, to make sure your philanthropic wishes are fulfilled, to make sure you have Ampath's account name and number. At the very bottom, I use an example of a real existing Ampath fund. The gold standard, which is, I'm going to read it off to you, is basically making the gift payable to Indiana University Foundation for the benefit of the IU School of Medicine's Ampath Kenya Operating Fund, bearing account number I3800161128. That would be the gold standard of making a gift in your estate, will, trust, IRA, beneficiary, whatever the case may be. If you're interested in making such a gift, reach out to us. We'd be glad to help you find and locate an existing fund aligned with your philanthropic passions, and to give you suggested language to make sure that it's written correctly so it has the impact that you desire. I know we're up against it on time. That's all I've got for now, and I turn it back over to you, Teresa.
Great. Thank you, Tim. Are there any questions, comments at this point? We are fortunate to have kind and generous Ampath donors, and this is terrific information for those donors should they consider giving in other ways to Ampath that are tax smart giving. Is there any, I just want to, as we're rounding up, Tim, any direction you want to give for folks should they have more interest, want more information?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously reach out to Teresa, reach out to Deb, reach out to myself. There's more than one way to make an impact at Ampath. These were the three that we highlighted. Some folks nowadays, we have appreciated stock. A lot of people have an investment portfolio with appreciated stock. Instead of selling that stock and then gifting the net proceeds, it's tax smart to gift the stock itself. We can also help you kind of walk through that as a possibility as well. So contact us. We'd be glad to let you know of some other gifting strategies that might be a good fit for your personal situation.
Great. Thank you so much.
I guess my final comment would be that, you know, there are a number of things that I would not have achieved in my life if I had not participated in the Ampath program, both, you know, personally rewarding, but professionally rewarding. So I feel like this is just paying back what I've gotten from it, and hopefully paying ahead for the people who can take advantage of this and have some of the experiences that I had.
Beautifully said, Bill, and thank you so much for all that you have done and given to Ampath and the tremendous growth and opportunity that's been presented because of someone like you and others. So with that, I'm going to conclude. We have made a recording of this conversation and would be happy to share it out to anyone that has an interest. And seeing no hands up, no comments, I'm going to say thank you and wish you all a good day.
Thanks, Teresa.